Cory Barlog, the mastermind behind the Game of the Year of 2019, God of War, has spoken about his desires of what a perfect Mandalorian game would be. It was so down to the point and detailed that previous Star Wars 1313 developers spoke out about how that was the game they wanted to make all the way back in 2012. So in today's video, we're going to be diving into what Cory exactly said, compare it to most Star Wars fans' desires of what they want to see in a Mandalorian game, the traction the tweet got, and how this might impact what we might get in the future for Star Wars gaming. So before we jump into it, let me pass the question over to you. What do you want to see in a Mandalorian-esque type game? Is it something you want more akin to what Cory has mentioned? Do you only want Star Wars 1313 and nothing else? Or perhaps none of the suggestions here haven't truly spoken to you yet, and you might have an idea of your own. So let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. So as mentioned, Cory Barlog posted his thoughts and opinions on what should be in a Mandalorian game, stating if somebody isn't working on a great single player Mandalorian game where you play a bounty hunter, flying your ship from system to system, picking up bounties, upgrading your Beskar armor, and getting into adventures, then I really don't know what the hell we're doing here. He continued his statement with, and by great single player, I mean a strong focus on character development with relatable human triumphs, losses, and seemingly impossible decisions to wrestle with. Not just shooting, but surviving, both physically and emotionally, though I would hope the shooting would be fun. Believe it or not, there's a lot to break down here in just these small paragraphs. Cory has mentioned a little bit more since then, but we'll get into that later into the video. So the tweet garnered 60,000 likes, which is quite considerable considering it's around Star Wars gaming. So everything he mentioned here does resemble quite similarly to Star Wars 1313, a cancelled Star Wars project back around 2012 and 2013. Whilst not everything here is one-to-one identical, Star Wars 1313 looked like it was going to stay within Coruscant. Cory is kind of looking for something more like you see in Jedi Fallen Order, for example, where you do travel from planet to planet. Celia Hoden, one of the developers on Star Wars 1313, did respond saying that they were trying to make that type of game, aka Star Wars 1313. We dived a lot into that tweet and the responses she made on that thread in a separate video, which I'll link in the top right corner now or in the pinned comment down below. Judging by Cory's initial reactions, I would say this is something akin to a GTA-styled open world planet-to-planet exploration game, kind of like how you go to different cities in Deus Ex Human Revolution, or maybe even planet-to-planet from No Man's Sky. Actually, the Old Republic, the MMORPG that you can play today, has something kind of similar to that. Bounty Hunter for the PS2 is actually a really good suggestion on how similar it could be in terms of gameplay as well. However, that also holds a very similar gameplay style to Star Wars 1313 as well. Probably one of the best examples I could ever think of similar to what Cory's asking for is actually Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3 on the GameCube. That game had you exploring from planet to planet with vastly different wildlife on each one. Each planet having their own characteristics, the way of life they had, the ecosystem just acted different planet to planet. And I think this type of Mandalorian game where you're exploring those type of planets with those bounties to capture definitely screams a really good Mandalorian game. Especially in the TV show where Din has to go from planet to planet literally every episode. And judging to the responses to Cory Barlog's tweet, it certainly looks like a lot of people are behind him on this idea. Going into the second paragraph where he talks about relatable human triumphs, losses, and seemingly impossible decisions to wrestle with, I think we see that quite a lot in his game, God of War. God of War, if you haven't played it already, which you totally should by the way, takes a very two-dimensional character from the old games while fleshes him out with some really strong vulnerabilities like protecting his son, for example. And best off, the game doesn't shy away from the lore built from the previous 3 games. In fact, it leads you to believe there's no correlation between games until halfway through they bring all of that old lore back, and the reaction from people is astounding. But for me personally, when I played God of War, it was the storyline, just like how Cory's asking for this Mandalorian game. On the surface, you think this is going to be an annoying child sidekick, but I've never been so invested in Kratos as a character before since the 4th iteration of the series. And honestly, I think this is a perfect fit for the Mandalorian game, because because we've seen this in the TV show. Look at the character development between Din and the child. He's definitely built up this father-like figure for Grogu. And I think that's such an interesting dynamic, having a very strong character mixed with something very vulnerable, meaning that this well-trained, lethal character has to do overtime to protect this very vulnerable thing. And I think that's perfect for the Mandalorian as a game. Think about how stressful these combats could be, where no matter how strong you are, you really have to protect the child. You want to protect the child. I think that mixed with very fleshed out, flawed characters that you want to befriend could make this a really interesting story narrative. And as for gameplay, going from these planets and seeing all these people and seeing how these cities and towns on these planets work, man, you're just setting up for like one of the best Star Wars games out there. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was very linear. There wasn't too much exploration to do other than follow a very tightly knit storyline. This is mostly due to Cal having to conform to the timelines in canon. You can't go too wild with a story in that timeline without actually accidentally retconning some stuff. I honestly feel The Mandalorian doesn't have to worry about this sort of thing. Yes, you've had tie-ins with characters from Star Wars The Clone Wars and soon probably to be Star Wars Rebels, but the game doesn't have to follow that path at all. This could easily be something slotted in between, say, season 1 and 2, or even in between an episode. It doesn't really matter. So I'm really interested to hear what you think of Cory Barlog's opinions, if they differ from your own, and if they differ from mine. But to go back to Cory Barlog's thread, on his third tweet, he mentioned, "I bet somewhere there's a dev who is secretly working on this, and they've just liked the tweet as a small way of to say, on it." To this entirely fictional person I just created in my mind, I say, thank you. I think that inspired a lot of the Star Wars 1313 developers to crop up and say, hey, we were actually working on something like this, only then to Disney cancel it when they purchased Lucasfilm. A lot of people did discuss about how they wanted Respawn Entertainment to work on this game, and whilst Respawn Entertainment is certainly one of the biggest studios out there right now, with EA's exclusivity deal, it's probably very unlikely. And whilst yes, EA's exclusivity deal does end in 2023, we've already discussed this in a previous video that is very unlikely. If you want to hear more about that and why we strongly believe they're going to be renewed, check out our video on the current state of Star Wars gaming in the top right corner right now, or in the pinned comment down below. Cory did also respond to some criticisms when there's no need to interfere with a video game when the 2 series of The Mandalorian has done incredibly well already. To that, Cory Barlog did say that it should be a completely new story, not including the child. He believes that the new story would be a better way than just making the game of a show. I'm a little bit indecisive on that personally. If you are going to use Din, you just gotta include Grogu. There's no other real option to that. And I feel like a prequel would just be a bit empty. I think one thing that a lot of people are enjoying in The Mandalorian is how much character development The Mandalorian is actually having. And to have a prequel to go back to his old ways is a bit, not really for me personally. If I could pick any developer to work on this Mandalorian game, it would be Cory Barlog and his team, just like how they worked on God of War. Honestly, Santa Monica Studio did a fantastic job with God of War 4. The camera work, the characters, the voice acting, the music, the gameplay, all of it was just absolutely astounding, and I think it would be a perfect fit for a Mandalorian game. And when somebody did express their opinion that Cory and his team should make the game, he responded with a "this is the way" gift. Not exactly telling, but my god, if he's keeping something under wraps and it's actually underway, I will be screaming. We did mention in a previous video that games take so much longer to make than, say, a TV series. Like God of War definitely had more than 4 years of development. And I'm honestly going to say that's probably not including pre-development time. And if there is a Mandalorian game underway, it is definitely being fast-tracked. It might be a little bit rushed, just so that it could reach a 3-year development time system. But honestly, it depends. I think it could be a little bit faster if they were working off a pre-existing engine. Say, for example, the competent team behind the God of War engine. That wasn't developed in Unreal Engine or Frostbite 3. That was a proprietary system created by Sony Santa Monica, and the engine was developed in-house specifically for that game. So yeah, maybe that would be a brilliant choice for the Mandalorian game. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Cory was using this as an opportunity to jab at Disney to be like, hey, you know, we could make this, come on. But of course, that really comes down to EA's exclusivity deal on Star Wars games. I know a lot of people find it pretty controversial to have a publisher/developer have sole control over a franchise, especially for at least a decade. But that doesn't necessarily mean is completely off the list. It's not the first time Sony has made collaborations or investments with other game companies in the past. Take a look at earlier this year where Sony made a $250 million investment into Epic Games. There could be something on a similar line with Disney or EA. But honestly, I don't think we'll see any teasers or reveals of a Mandalorian game until the show is probably in its 3rd or 4th season, if you ask me. And I wouldn't even be surprised if the game doesn't release until like after season 4. But honestly, that's something we'll just have to wait and see. Games do take so long to make, guys, especially when you're trying to make a AAA one. But that is where I'll wrap up today's video. Again, what do you guys think? Do you really like what Cory Barlog has for a Mandalorian game? Do you agree with me and how I semi-agree with him on some points, semi-agree that I don't? Or do you have a completely different Mandalorian game idea that you want to share with us in the comments down below? That is your question of the day, as mentioned earlier in the video. But with that all said and done, guys, I have been Charlie, you've been watching EcksToo, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.